Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 6 articles in this edition for you. All the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. The first article I have is off of BizPac Review. It says Mexico agrees to take its citizens back, but rest to use the gateway country are on their own. Mexico's ambassador to the U.S. is conceding that his country will take back any Mexican citizens deported from the U.S., but he also warned that Mexico will not take foreigners even if they traveled through Mexico to enter the U.S. The representative from our southern neighbor said they would accept any Mexican citizen who was deported even after having committed a crime in the U.S., according to PJ Media's Nick Balzi, who spoke to Mexican ambassador to the U.S., Carlos M. Sada. PJ Media asked the ambassador if his country will take all those deported from the U.S. As long as they are Mexicans, yes. As long as they are not Mexicans, no, the ambassador said. The ambassador was referring to part of Trump's draft order that would maintain that the U.S. could deport to Mexico anyone who illegally arrived in the U.S. across the southern border, whether they are Mexican or not. The Mexican official agreed that his country will still accept its own citizens deported from the U.S. after being convicted of serious crimes, but stood firm against taking deportees of other nationalities that used Mexico as a gateway nation. Sada did, though, note that Mexico is willing to work to slow illegal immigration from nations south of his own border. Now, immigration from Mexico is dropping, and dropping year by year. And you can take this statistic of immigration of last year and previous years. It is just 1/4 of the 100% that come to the United States coming from Mexico. So we are working together in order to find a solution of immigrants coming from Central America, for instance, from third world countries, Sada said. Of course, Ambassador Sada also reiterated that his country will not pay for any wall built on America's southern border. Well, it has already been said really clearly and loud, Mexico is not going to pay for the wall. So we are working in different scenarios. But that is one issue Mexico is not taking into consideration at all, the ambassador said. It's not clear yet if President Trump will continue to pressure Mexico to take back those it allowed to use the country to enter the United States, or if he will negotiate with each individual country. The next article is off of InfoWars. Michigan only state that allows police to have sex with prostitutes during investigations. Law grants police immunity from prosecution if they've had sex with prostitute during the investigation. Michigan has a law on the books that grants the police immunity from prosecution if they've had sex with a prostitute during an investigation. Michigan is the only state we know of which still grants that immunity, but that might change. Bridget Carr, a professor and director of the Human Trafficking Clinic at the University of Michigan Law School, is working with Representative Gary Glenn, Republican of Midland, to draft a bill that would get rid of that exemption. Carr first became aware of the exemption a couple of years ago when Hawaii was phasing out their exemption. You just can't make this stuff up. And there's some comments at the bottom of this if you want to pull it up to view those. And there's a lot of comments on that. Off of BizPac Review. Illegal immigrant activist comes out to give a press conference, then promptly detained by ICE. The boldness instilled in illegal immigrants by the Obama administration is proving to be their undoing. In what may be a matter of pushing one's luck a little too far, an illegal immigrant activist was detained by ICE agents Wednesday, shortly after taking part in a news conference in Jackson, Mississippi. Identified in the media as a dreamer, had let her status expire, and according to her attorney, was apprehended as a visa overstay, the Clarion Ledger reported. Immigration authorities detained Vargas's father and brother last month and questioned her after finding her hiding in a closet, but they released her after Vargas, who came to the U.S. from Argentina when she was 7 years old, claimed she was in the Federal Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. She had reportedly reapplied after allowing her status to expire, but the application was pending. Vargas spoke about the fears of being deported on Wednesday while advocating for a pathway to citizenship for all illegal immigrants. Today, my father and brother await deportation while I continue to fight this battle as a dreamer to help contribute to this country, which I feel is very much my country, she said. A path for citizenship is necessary for DACA recipients, but also for the other 11 million undocumented people with dreams. After the news conference, the car Vargas was traveling in was stopped on Interstate 55 by ICE officers. The next article that I have for you is off of Sputnik News, and it says rumors of new generation Chinese fighting vehicle explode after photo appears. This article up to take a look at the photos in it. It says a photograph of a previously unseen and unknown infantry fighting vehicle circulated Chinese online forums, indicating that the Chinese People's Liberation Army is likely rolling out a new military vehicle. Early in February, an image was posted on Chinese website CJBDY showing a newly designed front-end frame and possibly an unmanned turret for what could be a prototype infantry fighting vehicle, IHS Jane reported. The authenticity of the picture has not been verified. If the reporters are true, the prototype the China North Industries Corporation, ZBD-04, the defense news outlet said. Infantry fighting vehicles are similar to armored personnel carriers, but are able to provide direct fire support to ground forces. The primary differences between previous IFVs and the new prototype is in the vehicle design, as well as a newly developed turret featuring a 100mm primary rifle gun in addition to cannon, according to IHS Janes. If the photograph depicts a secret IFV project, it would not be the only major military advancement Chinese officials are keeping undercover. The PLA has made significant strides in the development of an H-20 bomber that Chinese state media said would surely be comparable to the B-2 Spirit stealth bombers that have been deployed by the U.S. Air Force. The Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C. did not respond to a request to verify the authenticity of the photograph. Critics remain skeptical of whether developments in the PLA's arsenal are based on ideas originating from China. For example, the most expensive weapon program in the U.S. military history, the F-35 fighter jet, has been touted as a fifth-generation warplane. According to an NSA report, Chinese hackers made off with some 50 terabytes of data pertaining to the Joint Strike Fighter after assessing U.S. defense networks. Military analysts have pointed out that elements of the F-35 have been incorporated in the PLA's J-20 stealth jet. On Tuesday, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson convened with Chinese State Counselor Yang Jiechi, in which both sides affirmed the importance of a constructive bilateral relationship, spokesman Mark Toner said. The top officials discussed areas of mutual concern, including North Korea's nuclear program. Toner added that the state counselor extended an invitation for the secretary to visit Beijing, to which Tillerson replied that he is interested in such a visit in the near future. I have for you is off of Natural News, and it says, shock report. McDonald's workers' uniforms made in U.S. slave labor camps. Excuse me. Everyone knows slavery was officially abolished in the United States in 1865. Or was it? Under the term of the 13th Amendment, slavery is prohibited in the United States except as a punishment for crimes, a loophole that has allowed legal slavery in America to continue and now on a greater scale than ever before. In fact, according to returntonow.com, there are currently more, mostly dark-skinned people, performing mandatory, essentially unpaid hard labor in America today than there was in 1830. But how is that possible in the land of the free, and why haven't we heard anything about it? The important thing to understand is that America is not the land of the free, but rather the land of the incarcerated. There are more prisoners in America than anywhere else on the planet. From returntonow.com, with 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prison population, the United States has the largest incarcerated population in the world. No other society in history has imprisoned more of its own citizens. There are 500,000 more prisoners in the U.S. than in China, which has 5 times our population. Approximately 1 in 100 adults in America were incarcerated in 2014. Approximately 1 in 100 adults in America were incarcerated in 2014. Out of an adult population of 245 million that year, there were 2.4 million people in prison, jail, or some other form of detention center. The vast majority, 86% of prisoners, have been locked up for nonviolent victimless crimes, many of them drug-related. This incarceration boom has provided vast supply of cheap labor for American corporations who can pay prisoners as little as 23 cents an hour, or in some cases nothing at all, while receiving millions of dollars in tax breaks for doing so. The contracting of prison labor to large corporations is occurring in both state and federal prisons. Prisoners are forced to perform jobs ranging from sewing McDonald's uniforms to manufacturing high-tech electronic components for Patriot missiles. And it's happening at prisons throughout the country. Unicor, formerly known as Federal Prison Industries, is a quasi-public for-profit corporation run by the Bureau of Prisons that contracts labor in federal prisons. According to global research, Unicor is now the U.S. government's 39th largest contractor with 110 factories and 79 federal penitentiaries. In some prisons, the work is optional, if low paying, and many prisoners take the work out of sheer boredom or just so they can buy small day-to-day personal items, although many end up leaving prison in more debt than when they arrived. In other prisons, the work is mandatory and often is carried out in unsafe, unregulated conditions. Prisoners who refuse to work are placed in solitary confinement or even beaten, according to some reports. It's interesting how much talk there is these days about the outsourcing of American jobs overseas, but how little is mentioned regarding the insourcing of jobs to slave labor factories or facilities, such as prisons located here in our own backyard. As America edges ever closer to becoming a corporate fascist state, the fat cats are taking full advantage of its overcrowded, run-for-profit prison system. Virtually every large American corporation benefits from prison slave labor, but some of the biggest offenders include the Pentagon's major military contractors, such as McDonnell Douglas Boeing and General Dynamics Lockheed Martin, McDonald's, Walmart, J.P. Morgan and Company, Procter & Gamble, Wendy's, and scores of others. A century and a half after the Emancipation Proclamation, slavery continues to exist in America, and no one seems to care. It may be hard to believe, but there's no escaping the fact that prisoners in America are being forced to perform work against their will, the textbook definition of slavery. The next article that I have for you, and final one in this episode, is off of thomasdeshaw.com, and it says these 19 retailers are on the brink of bankruptcy. 13,216 stores to close. Moody's recently released a sector in-depth report titled Retail and Apparel. U.S. distressed retail and apparel companies are on the rise. Who's next? And its findings show that the retail bubble could soon be taking another major blow: bankruptcy. We all know that retail is a very volatile market. This factor causes many companies to turn to financial sponsors and hedge funds that, in return for quick cash, offer highly leveraged funds, causing many retailers to end up struggling under debt with the terms set by the sponsors. Due to these agreements, distressed bond users in the U.S. retail and apparel markets are nearing levels that haven't been 2009, tripling in the. While the clock has been ticking on stores like Sears and J. Crew for quite some time, 17 other stores appear to have found themselves in the crosshairs of financial doom. 2,867 stores. Rue 21, 1,200 stores. Payless, 4,496 stores. 9 West, 800 stores. Gymboree, 1,200 stores. Not Your Daughter's Jeans, and they have not got a list of stores on that one. Indra Holdings Corp, there's no list of stores on that one. Tom's Shoes, no list of stores on that one. True Religion, 900 stores. Bon Ton Department Stores, 267 stores. David's Bridal, 300 stores. Tops, 126 stores. Velocity, and that has no listing of stores. Fairway, 10 stores. 99-cent only stores, 350 stores. Charming Charlie, 350 stores. Evergreen Saver, 330 stores. These 19 retailers, including Sears and J. Crew, have more than $3.7 billion of debt maturing in the next 5 years, with about 30% of that total due by the end of 2018. If all the retailers listed were to shutter their doors, would amount to the closing of more than 14,450 stores and leave hundreds of thousands of employees without jobs. Aside from sponsored ownership, these apparel companies suffer from stressed liquidity, weak quantitative credit profiles, over-discounted merchandise, a decrease in traffic, challenged competitive positions, and erratic management structures. These companies will be able to reverse the destruction remains to be seen. Based on the growing trend of retail bankruptcy and mall abandonment, it seems highly unlikely. So that's all I have for you in this episode. I'll remind you that there's going to be a live show tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope you can join us. If you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up. Don't be afraid to let me know. Share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. That way you'll stay informed. See you in the next episode.